Hey everybody, this is Adrian here. Just coming to you with the haul that I just got from my quarter bin on yesterday. I think I might make this a regular segment actually. We'll see. So let's get it started. All right. The first part of this haul is some stray issues of the Avengers. Now, this is I believe 188 and 191 were during John Byrne's brief run on the book in the late 70s, like maybe 79, 80, right as he was transitioning to X-Men, or he might have actually been started. He might have actually been started on X-Men at this time. I remember that there was a story that Byrne related that so apparently based on this story, he was drawing X-Men at the time. At the same time, he said that he was drawing a page of Avengers, and there was a scene where all the Avengers, including the Scarlet Witch, were riding in the Quinjet, and he didn't realize it at the time until he had penciled it quite a bit. But he had actually, instead of Scarlet Witch, he had drawn Storm in the seat instead. And so he obviously he caught the mistake and everything. It never went to print. But he was, multitasking, like a beast, just knocking these books out. And, there's something about, Byrne during this time that is just so irresistible, especially like on this cover of 188. This cover with Austin inks. Byrne and Austin, obviously that's one of the all-time team supremes, you know what I'm saying? The interiors are really great too. I mean, just some good Byrne. And this Avengers 271, this is during John Buscema's run, where he was being inked by Tom Palmer and story by Roger Stern. Now, a lot of people remember this particular run primarily for the Under Siege storyline, where Avengers Mansion gets invaded by the Masters of Evil, and I've been wanting to read that forever, but it's tough to find the issues for a decent price. So I keep hoping that they pop up in a quarter bin, one of these days, so I can really get them all in hopefully one swoop. But the rest of this Buscema run, I believe it starts back in like 250, issue 250, and it runs all the way, believe it or not, through issue 300. And this is just some great comic book reading, just some classic superhero stuff. It's John Buscema and Tom Palmer, so you're just going to get just some great art, just some classic stuff, so I'm trying to complete a run of Buscema stuff on the Avengers during this particular run in the late 80s. So that's that. Next up, we have Prime. Now, these Prime issues, I've had these several times over the years, and it's really just for Norm Breyfogle, the late Norm Breyfogle. Rest in peace. I got issues 4, 5, 9, and 11. And, I have a friend who says that he can't stand looking at any of these like Ultraverse books, and in some ways I can see why, like particularly on Prime, the lettering, it's all hand lettered, all of it. Even the credits are hand lettered, and I guess maybe to him they just look real homemade, but to me that's kind of the appeal. And especially with Breyfogle's art just being so dynamic. I mean, look at these tones that he's doing. The stuff is just cool. I mean, it's just great art. You know what I mean? And yeah, so anytime I find this Breyfogle stuff, if I don't already have it, I'll pick it up. I've gone through a few sets of Prime over the years, so here's some more that I'm going to get, and hopefully hold on to these and just complete the set again. Next, we have SeaQuest DSV. Now, this show was out when I was a kid. I believe it was produced by Steven Spielberg on NBC, and it came on Sunday nights, usually by 8 o'clock or so. And the only reason, being honest with you, the only reason I got this particular issue is that it has a Howard Chaykin cover. I'm a huge Howard Chaykin fan, you know, and I had never seen this cover before, or I've never even seen it mentioned on his checklist. So probably what I'll do for this is just go in here, you know, take the cover, clip it off, and just put it in like my in my files, you know, just as a single like tear sheet of Chaykin stuff. But if you're interested, the interior is actually done by a pretty veteran staff. You got Keith Pollard as the penciler, and one of my all-time faves, Alfredo Alcala on the inks. And you know, it's very just workman-like comics. You know, has a very clear line style. You know, it's funny because, like I mentioned, you know, SeaQuest was a pretty popular show at the time. I think it ran for 2 or 3 years on NBC and that primetime slot, you know, so it's definitely geared for kids, but there's a lot of this that is not geared towards kids that kind of rides that line, you know. I mean, you have this green-haired guy right here just cold-bloodedly murdering this woman, you know. It's just nah. So I wonder if Spielberg and them, you know, actually took a look at what was inside of here. But anyway, that's SeaQuest DSV. All right, and then I got these. Now, this is Onslaught. This is Onslaught Marvel Universe and Onslaught X-Men. This is obviously a part of the Onslaught storyline that Marvel had, I believe, in like '96. Yeah, in like '96, and it led to the event, the Heroes Reborn event, where Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee came back to take over for the company's, you know, big titles, you know, to kind of, well, no kind of, you know, to boost sales because, you know, they were really, really tanking. But this particular event started in the pages of X-Men. I believe it was in like it started laying the groundwork for it in X-Men, adjective list X-Men, number 45 or so, and it ran through like X-Men number 55, and this is kind of the culmination of it, you know. And I picked these up because this is Adam Kubert, you know, one of my faves. Adam Kubert being inked by Dan Green, you know, so that's a veteran lineup, and just as you would expect, just dynamic art. You know what I mean? This is Adam during his kind of like just peak wild time, you know, where he was just taking so many chances with his artwork and everything. And what's interesting about these particular covers is that they share the same cover composition. For X-Men, you obviously see Onslaught fully helmeted, you know, and everything with all of his armor on, and Wolverine in this position. And then you see on Marvel Universe Onslaught, Hulk takes that position that Wolverine is. And here it looks like, even though Wolverine in this depiction is supposed to be, you know, a shorty, he's almost as big as Hulk. But on the Marvel Universe version, you see that Onslaught is fully revealed. All of his armor and everything has been, you know, pretty much taken off, and all of the other Marvel heroes at this time are, you know, ganging up on him. You know, and same thing for the back covers too. You know, on the Marvel Universe, you have Captain America throwing his shield, and then you got Bishop instead throwing an energy blast, Human Torch, Cannonball, Thor, Storm. And, you know, it's kind of neat because, you know, it kind of matches up on these particular characters. Each one has lightning powers. So you have Storm, Thor, lightning, of course. You have Human Torch, Cannonball. They kind of flame on a bit, you know. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, Adam Kubert, this is like that peak, you know, that peak, you know, time for him, you know, in the late 90s that I love. All right, and speaking of Kuberts, I got some issues of Ka-Zar. Yes, Ka-Zar, Lord of the Jungle. I'd actually gotten a couple of copies of Ka-Zar last week, and I keep coming back to these because, to me, this is where Andy Kubert, Adam's brother, you know, really started, you know, setting it off for me. You know, I was kind of an Andy Kubert fan, sort of, but, you know, I was much bigger a fan of his brother Adam, obviously. But right here is just where, you know, he just really started, you know, coming into his own. And for like the next, you know, 2 or 3 years, I was a big Andy Kubert fan. You know, his stuff just became so dynamic, and the poses that he would do, and, you know, his artwork. And again, he was taking, you know, kind of the same chances that Adam was taking in his books, but his were much more grounded in terms of, you know, the panel composition and twisting the angles, and, you know, really, you know, making the camera turn and all. They're just great looking comics, you know. So I'm hopefully I got issues 2, 3, 4, and 5. Issue 6 was actually a fill-in prior to this one. That's the only reason I didn't pick it up. And as I recall, it was not vital to the story, so I skipped that one. I read it originally, but I skipped that one in terms of completing this run. But, you know, Ka-Zar, Andy Kubert, make sure you pick up issues 1 through 5, and then 7 through, I believe this storyline ends on issue 11, and then there's an epilogue of sorts on issue 12, and that's the whole Ka-Zar run. And then after that, if you're looking for more stuff by Andy Kubert during this time, check out his late X-Men run, Adjectiveless X-Men in the late 90s. Starting with issue number 45 through most of the early 50s, definitely through 55, and that'll take you through the Onslaught, you know, storyline that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. And then also check out his Captain America too. There's a Captain America where he took over after Ron Garney when they came back from Heroes Reborn. He takes over with issue number 7, if I'm not mistaken. He stays on there for a while, at least a year. No, actually a couple of years. So all that stuff, Captain America, those X-Men, and definitely these Ka-Zars are a great reading from Andy Kubert during that time. Okay, and here is a book that I've always wanted to try, but never felt compelled to. And then finally on the Humbug, you know, when I went to the bins yesterday, I was like, you know, let me just check these out. It's ROM, Spaceknight, straight issues 56, 57, number 60, number 65, and number 75, which actually is the last issue of the series. I didn't realize. Now, I've had a bunch of my friends, you know, over the years, you know, tell me I'm a member of a couple of groups online, you know, of guys who have similar interests in terms of like classic back issues, and we do a lot of quarter bin diving, and they would always recommend ROM Spaceknight. And, you know, I had gotten a Sal Buscema book, from Tomorrow's Publishing, and it's kind of a retrospective of his career, and there's a section in there where he was talking about ROM and how it was a pretty fun assignment for him. You know what I'm saying? If you don't know, ROM started out as a toy in the early 80s, and as a tie-in, the toy company, I forget which toy company, wanted Marvel to do a tie-in comic book. So and it became pretty popular, actually. Obviously, it lasted 75 issues. And the interesting thing about number 75 that I found, and I did not realize this, check it out. Now, Buscema started this series, with issue 1, of course, and he would draw, over the course of the series. But eventually he started to have fill-ins. Like, I think in these particular issues, 60 and 65, he is filled in by Steve Ditko, and believe it or not, Steve Ditko inked by Tom Palmer, and or 65. Let me double check that so I don't misquote myself. Yeah, and on 65, he is actually inked by P.Craig Russell. That's an interesting lineup, and it works. I was flipping through it, last night just briefly. Beautiful stuff. But back to what I was saying about number 75. Check it. On 75, not only do we have Steve Ditko being inked by P.Craig Russell on letters, and it's apparent as soon as you look at it. On letters is lettering by Kevin Nowlan. Wow. they kind of pulled out all the stops here. So it's a beautiful looking book, just classic stuff, man. Just the lettering by Nowlan, and then the art by Ditko and Russell. This was definitely a find, very cool, man. So yeah, I picked these up, because all my friends have been telling me and recommending it for years to me. So I'm really looking forward to digging in and getting a taste of ROM Spaceknight. All right, almost to the finish line here. We have Shock Rockets by, I believe it was written by Kurt Busiek, and then art by the Team Supreme of Stuart Immonen and Waid von Gradbadger. Beautiful books, beautiful. And I didn't appreciate them at the time because, I think these came out in like 90, no, they came out in 2000, through the Guerrilla Comics imprint. And Guerrilla Comics was an imprint in the late 90s. I want to say like 98, 99. And then obviously in 2000, that were coming out with books by veteran creators like George Perez, the aforementioned Kurt Busiek. I think Mark Waid and Barry Kitson had a book called Empire under Guerrilla. And then Telos by Todd DeZago and the late Mike Wieringo. That also came out under Guerrilla as well. But I picked up Shock Rockets, and I think these are all the issues, I believe. Oh, no, I think it continues. So I think there's maybe another issue. But I just grabbed what I could from the bin, so this is issues 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is beautiful stuff. I mean, just beautiful. Big, just big action, Stuart Immonen, if you'll pardon me, he's drawing his butt off, this is just fantastic. Just great stuff. And this is during Immonen's period where he was still, doing a lot of shadows, a lot of blacks in his work, Later, I'd say later in the decade, we're talking 2000 here, later in the decade, he would start opening up his style a bit more, even to the point where he would have a bit more cartooning, especially with the Next Wave and everything. But this is just gorgeous stuff, dynamic, just marvelous, man, marvelous. So I mean, you obviously cannot go wrong with that team of Immonen and von Gradbadger, for real. So that's Shock Rockets. All right, now here's an interesting one that I've always seen, but I've never picked up, believe it or not, in all my years of collecting. Heroes for Hope. Now, this book here, as it says on the cover, was a benefit book for famine relief in Africa. Now, if you grew up in the 80s, like I did, you probably saw the images coming out of particularly Ethiopia of the starving children and just people, really dying from famine. And a couple of companies, I think DC even did a version of a comic book for famine relief. But this is such an anomaly. I was flipping through it, and this is so crazy. Obviously, this has an early Arthur Adams cover. This is the cover he has dated here is May 1985, and he has a precursor to that famous pose that he would draw Wolverine in for that poster and that little cardboard stand-up. And for some reason, this particular pose, while I'm thinking about it, Wolverine crouched over, usually with claws out. I think they took the claws off of this cover because that's kind of like, we're talking about famine relief. We're not talking about shivving somebody. So I think that's why they took the claws off the cover here, because normally he would. But this particular pose of Wolverine being crouched over, I want to say that actually began with Paul Smith on the cover of issue Uncanny X-Men 173, 174, somewhere thereabouts. And just for whatever reason, that particular pose just really caught on, and then when Arthur Adams later did his version of it, just really took off. But anyway, what makes this book, this particular comic, such an anomaly is, look at this lineup here of talent, I mean, you have Stephen King. He wrote 3 pages in here. Man, Harlan Ellison wrote 3 pages in here. George Martin wrote 3 pages in here. It's like, wow, this is crazy. And then the lineup of pencilers and inkers is very interesting. Check it out. Obviously, you got your Marvel stalwarts at this time, like John Romita Jr., John Buscema, John Byrne, But what's most interesting is that you have some that until this time, you had never seen do work for Marvel. And, probably nobody would think that they would work for Marvel, even though eventually, later they did. Richard Corbin contributes 3 pages, the same pages that Alan Moore writes in here, and that's just very interesting looking stuff. The Harlan Ellison pages are actually drawn by Frank Miller and inked by Bill Sienkiewicz, and they're very interesting. See if I can flip over to them right quick. See what we got here. Yeah, there we go. There's the last page of it. All right, and then here are the Miller and Sienkiewicz pages. You can tell it's Miller just by the chin here. I mean, he's definitely still on that, even and with the composition of the panels, he's definitely still on that in that period of, where he was doing Wolverine, the miniseries, and he would have, a big panel here to kind of anchor the page, as you can see, and then the smaller, almost satellite panels on the side here. And you can tell it's Miller because he's also going through that time of Dark Knight. So you got a big chin, and then you can tell it's Miller as well. The telltales are also, the way his poses are on his figures, Yeah. But yeah, Brian Bolland is in here. Check out this Brian Bolland page. Wow. Oh man. So this is just a good just team up of different talents, and hopefully they sold enough of these books, to help out, obviously. But what's crazy is that the actual story itself, I tried to halfway read it, last night when I was flipping through it, and it was just like they're going to see famine relief, obviously, but it's well-meaning, I should say, I guess. One panel in here did make me laugh. Let me see if we can there we go. Let me see if I can get to it before we get to this last book. Okay, you see here, the X-Men have brought food for, for the people, okay? Rogue here is holding a baby, ostensibly a baby, okay, and, feeding it. Now, why in the next panel, this particular baby turns into like a 10-year-old kid. Like, wow. Okay, man, that's hilarious to me. But anyway, and I believe this particular page was actually drawn by one of my faves, Howard Chaykin. So there's that. This page, and he ends the book as well. Howard Chaykin. Okay, and wrapping it up, we have WildCATS X-Men, The Golden Age by Scott Lobdell. And most importantly, for not only this book, but for almost 5 years after this book comes out, drawn by Travis Charest. Now, those of you in the know, there's no need for me to tell you how important this book is, how beautiful this book is. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. This particular book launched the careers of so many young artists in the very late 90s. I believe this came out in 97, if I'm not mistaken, 97, 98, in that period. And so many, countless artists were, inspired and, influenced by this particular book. There are certain, certain shots, like certain headshots that you'll see from here that pop up in other artists' book. And this is really where also, ink wash started taking off as well. You started seeing a lot more artists put in, this ink wash and this very thin-lined, repeatograph line work. That became very popular too. Artists such as Lanil Yu, Dustin Weaver. I'm trying to think of off the top of my head. I mean, there are quite a few that came along in the late, very tail end of the 90s, going into the early 2000s, that really used this book as a Bible. And it's funny, back in art school, when I went to art school in 99, there were a bunch of Travis Charest fans there, and when we got our student starter kit, there was a set of epitagraphs in there. And we would actually try to do our best Travis Charest impressions, trying to ink just like him, because that's what I believe he used for the inking on this book. And, obviously we failed tremendously, dramatically, there can only be one, like Highlander. But yeah, man, this WildCATS Golden Age, all-time classic. All-time classic, and it shot Travis to like the pantheon of, one of the all-time, art greats, for a generation, definitely. So, that's that. So that is my haul for this week from the Quarter Bins. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week with more discoveries from the Quarter Bin.